Good evening, all, and welcome to the zoo. The minions with me this evening are Cryptic,
Hello.
Terry Diamantis.
Hey, everyone.
Adam might be back now, or I might have done that a bit too quickly.
No,
If
No.
he says hello,
no, I'm back. I'm sorry.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
not a problem. I ended up going a bit quicker than I had originally intended, but
That's what she said. I mean,
Adam's here. I'm not Adam from last week. Come on now.
Whoa, hey,
Yeah.
hey. Wait, does that carry over every
Yes.
episode? Oh shit, it's canon.
If I
Yes, it is
remember
me.
something and it's a reason to bring it up, it's probably going to be brought up.
Oh no, well, that's not good.
It's the dangerous thing about me having the spurred mind. But, of course, as it is a Friday, once again, I am the keeper for this evening, Sanguine. How are all of you doing tonight?
I'm tired. Extremely tired.
Yeah, me too.
Being admired?
Yeah, I've been. So Wednesday and Thursday, I woke up at 1:30 a.m. Worked until 6 p.m. and then, rinse and repeat for 2 days straight. So
Ah. Definitely understandable that you'd be a bit knackered then.
yeah.
How about you, Terry?
Also tired, but mine is entirely self-inflicted. I was playing Cyberpunk 2077, and then I saw the time. I thought I should go to bed, and then I didn't. And so that is entirely my fault, but yes, I am also tired.
Ah, fair enough. Have they fixed that game up now? Is it playable, or is it still
Oh, yeah.
glitchy as all hell?
There was a big patch, and it was actually the day before I finished the story. They dropped the massive, version 1.5 patch, and that fixed all the problems I was having with the game. So, yeah, it's up and running as good as anyone could expect a massive open world game to run. It doesn't crash anymore, and there's occasional glitches of small graphical things, but nothing like it used to be.
That's good to hear. And Adam, how are you doing tonight?
No, I'm doing all right. Nice Friday evening. Yeah. I hear this Yielding Ring is a pretty fun game.
Yes, I've heard very
Yeah.
good things about Elden Ring.
I hear that Hoover Dam and Sora Luna was the queens and queen net of Elden Rings.
Ah, they've been playing a lot, enjoying the Souls-esque game. I've heard that this one is kind of like Bloodborne in that it's a good game for people that haven't mastered the normal Dark Souls mechanics. It's still somewhat approachable, but it requires more of the lore to be known.
I played the first Dark Souls, and I didn't like it.
It's a lot of a human reflex type of game. So
Yeah. It's
So if
one
a
of
game
those-
promises to be like Dark Souls, that's a good sign that I'll give it a miss.
Fair enough. Yeah, like I said, I've heard things that it's going across very well with everyone that likes the series, and
Mhm.
it seems to be a game that even people that were getting pissed off and would go, man, fuck this game with all the Dark Souls, are having more fun with this one than they did with the Dark Souls games, which is always good to hear as well.
Yeah, I think I'm a little too eager to hit buttons. Like, you need to be very patient and methodical because, you can't interrupt an action that's in motion in Dark Souls. So, if you hit the attack button, you're doing that big ass slow sword swing, even if it was a terrible idea and you should be dodging right now, I'll be sitting there mashing the dodge button. It's like, nope, you've committed to this, and now you're going to die. And I don't have the right mindset for games like that.
So if it had more of like fighting game interrupt command, then you
Yeah.
need more game for it.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of games that are like that, if you like do another attack, it'll sort of like interrupt what you were doing, and like, yeah, I think I just work at a faster pace than the game wants you to play because you will die if you play it the way I do.
Fair enough. And then, Adam, how are you doing? Because of us Terry and of us Cryptic now. I don't think I got to you yet.
Well, I guess logically you'd end up at good old Adam, right?
Yep.
Oh, well.
So how are you doing?
I'm doing all right. I haven't. I mean, I guess I think Elden Ring came out on PS4 because I'm trying to sit there and think. I definitely don't have a computer that could run the game, and I certainly don't have the top two game consoles, right? Xbox and PlayStation. I pretty much stick around with Switch and old games. But yeah, I don't know. Getting better at Blaze Blue. That's a that's a plus, right?
Which
Nice.
Blaze Blue are you playing?
What?
Which Blaze Blue?
I don't know. I don't know. It's fucking Blaze. Oh shit.
Which one's the blaziest?
Well, I mean,
Hold on. No, centralification.
Central
Edition?
Fiction. Okay,
Yeah.
no, that's good because there's also Blaze Blue Cross Tag Battle, which is
Yeah.
like,
No, there's
really
there's a
bad.
couple of them.
So there's like the main Blaze Blue series, which has 4 games in it. Then there's also Cross Tag Battle, which plays completely differently to the rest of the series and is like more a crossover game because it's got like the characters from like Ruby and there's some other fighting games. Under Night Inverse, I think it's called. And so, like, it's got a whole bunch of these like crossover things, and it plays like garbage. I can't stand that game. But Central Fiction is great.
And I just looked up, and yes, Elden Ring is out for the PS4, the Xbox Series X and Series S, the Xbone, the PlayStation 5, and then, of course, computers.
And that, actually, Terry, I think you said it earlier that it was like kind of like the same game as like Dark Souls and Bloodborne. I saw somebody, somebody I follow who does game development. They were goofing about it, because it was like, it's all on the same engine, so it's it's pretty much it could be the same series, but it's
It's Souls.
yeah. So it's it's funny to see, it's funny to see all the reactions from it, but I don't know, the game looks interesting, I guess. I don't know. I probably play it.
It is very much not on my radar. I have zero interest in Elden Ring. Is it called?
Elden Ring. Yep.
Okay, yeah. No, that is not a game that's on my radar in any way. So, I mean, I hope it's good. I hope the people that like it, but yeah, and not something I'll be getting.
And like I said, if you like Soulsborne games, it has been getting a lot of people that are into Soulsborne games really happy and excited. So if you like those games, give it a go. If, like Terry, you aren't for Soulsborne games, then yeah, probably a pass for you. But it is nice to actually hear good things about a game that has just come out rather than hear a bunch of people going, well, this piece of shit crashes every time that you try to load it.
Well, I mean that's basically why I've said when Street Fighter 6 comes out, I'll be waiting 5 years for them to fix the launch issues, because Street Fighter 5, that launch was one of the biggest disasters that it's possible to have.
Street Fighter 5, Capcom has never recovered from it. So
No, and like self-inflicted wound. I mean, no one forced them to release that game in that state.
Yeah, it's like I was saying before the stream, so those who are listening along, this will be the first time you hear me say this. Those who are in the panel, you've already heard me say this. I'm really missing the days when a game would ship and it would be finished.
Those were the days.
There were always problems, of course. Like,
Yeah.
I'm trying to remember what the name of the game was. I want to say it was Dungeon Siege 3 or something like that was the game that I got ages ago. And I reached a certain point, and you're supposed to use a control rod to control this massive iron golem and just go wading across a bridge. My game had a fatal glitch that there was no fix for. Of the control rod didn't do shit other than transition you to the other screen where you're supposed to control the golem, but the golem would just kind of stand there.
Oops.
As all your player characters just get horrendously mauled by the force that they're supposed to kill with the golem. But that used to be the rarity that you would have a game that something that glaring happens. But
I think at the same time, they couldn't patch games back then, so I think they knew they only had one shot.
Yeah. And it was one of those weird glitches where it wasn't every copy had that problem. It was just some copies had the golem glitch. But I just miss when we had that. And I get that, well, we can patch it now. Yeah, you can patch it now, and that's fantastic because it means that any glitch that you didn't catch, you can then catch. But that doesn't mean that you should just go, yeah, everyone that buys it first night, they're just our alpha testers. Everyone that buys it within our first 3 months, they're our beta testers.
Well, like I said before the stream, I think it was Mortal Kombat 10. When it launched, the only thing that worked was the main menu. You couldn't pick anything from the menu. That would crash the game. But the main menu itself, it worked.
Yeah.
And then so when people installed it, it's like it automatically started downloading the patch because there's like a on launch patch that was like the rest of the game. But everyone was like, what the fuck is this? What am I meant to do? Well, like, why did you sell me a game that couldn't download the entire game? I had to download the main menu, which would trigger the download for the rest. Like, what the fuck are you idiots doing? And yeah, they copped a lot of shit over that.
They copped a lot of shit, but no company has learned its lesson from it.
Well, because idiots keep giving them money anyway.
Exactly. People keep on buying the half-made games. And half-made, and a lot of them is being extremely generous.
Mm-hmm.
And we just need games to actually come out. At least, I'm not even asking for 100% finish. Can we get 95?
But that's actually why I'm more interested in the Capcom fighting game collection, the 35th anniversary thing, than Street Fighter 6. Because these are like 20, 30-year-old games. They're as finished as they're going to be, right? All they've got to do is slap them on a download and then have at it. That's far more appealing to me than a game that's going to be broken on launch and then require patch after patch after patch just to get into a workable state.
At least one would hope that that's all that they need. Capcom, I haven't heard too much negative about Capcom recently, other than the previous mention, but with other studios, every time that they try to release a remastered, they don't just stick with, yeah, we slapped on better graphics and we shipped it. They end up changing things and fucks it up in new and interesting ways.
Yeah, if they change anything besides graphics and basic presentation, like, fine, add in training mode, that's like a standard for all fighting games, and if they didn't have it on, like, on the PlayStation or whatever it was that they were released on, yeah, add a training mode, add combo trials, also add all like the basic things, but don't change the actual functionality of the actual game. Just stick to what people want.
Yeah.
Just give them that.
Probably the only game series / company that I now trust, if they say, yeah, we're going to update this game and add in some more shit, that it'll still actually be good. The chaps that make Yakuza.
Okay.
Because Yakuza 1 and 2, you can't buy Yakuza 1 and 2 around anymore. You can buy Yakuza Kiwami 1 and 2.
Yes.
And those are massive improvements versus the standard fare that they had.
I haven't played 1 and 2 because, as you say, you can't buy them anymore. But I have played 3, which doesn't have a Kiwami version. Yep. And yeah, the difference is staggering. Yeah,
with 3, you still have kind of that tank control method of old school games.
Mm-hmm.
That in Kiwami, or 1 and 2, they pretty much got rid of. They patched up a lot of the menus so that they were a lot easier to navigate. They added in a good number of missions and side jobs and all that shit. So it worked out really well. And they were well received every time that they did it. No one was going, what the fuck? We aren't allowed to play this shit?
Mm-hmm. I still don't like that they took 1 and 2 off, like, the market. I think you should still, if you don't like the Kiwami versions, I think they should still be selling 1 and 2. The same way I don't like that they got rid of the non-remastered GTA games once the new one came out. No, you can't buy the original Vice City or San Andreas. I don't like that at all. Mm-hmm. But I mean, the improvements in Yakuza Kiwami and Kiwami 2, at least compared to Yakuza 3, were quite significant. And I would definitely want Kiwami versions of the entire series if they're willing to make them.
Yeah, and I'm not 100% sure if 1 and 2 were ever sold on PCs, on like Steam or anything like that, without being the Kiwami version. Okay, I know that they came out on, I think it was PS1 for Yakuza 1 and 2.
Okay. Because
they had to do a lot of work to get them to work on modern systems.
I'll bet. Yeah, I played 0, 1, 2, and 3. Mm-hmm. I played 0, 1, 2, and 3. Those are the only ones I've played.
Yeah, I'm currently in the process every so often of playing through 3. But I'm also getting distracted by other games that I've...
That happens all the time with me. I have to make a conscious effort not to start a new game unless I'm prepared to abandon all the other ones I'm currently playing. Because otherwise, I'll get caught up in it and I'll be like, where the hell was I up to in this game? Oh, fuck it, I won't go back to it. I'll move on to something else.
See, I will go back to them, just I have this habit of if I reach a point in a game where I'm going, okay, this is annoying the shit out of me, I'll go away from that game for a while, play new games, finish a couple new games, and then I'll come back to it. And most of the time when I do that, the part that was annoying the fuck out of me just breezes through.
Yeah.
And it leaves me going, okay, was I retarded when I was playing this last? What the hell was happening? How was this such a big problem? And now I come back only half remembering controls, and I'm able to beat it. What the fuck?
I think it's because there's like a mental like a you kind of get in a mental state where
You get in
like
a rut.
you keep repeating the same mistakes because muscle memory or whatever, and like just the way that the human mind sort of falls into patterns, and so you'll know, okay, don't do that. Oh fuck, I did it again. And you'll just get angrier and angrier, which makes the problem worse. And so in the end, stepping away, cooling the hell down, coming back later does fix it. It's just that I know I won't come back to it. I'll be like, fuck it, I don't care anymore. I'll do something else.
So then I have to ask, because you played Yakuza 0, did you bash your head against a wall when trying to do the dancing bit? Or did you just skip it and go, man, fuck it?
The dancing stuff I didn't really try and win. Most of the mini games, I said, are they fun? If they're fun, I'll see them through. So I did all the pocket racer stuff because I absolutely love the pocket racer stuff. The karaoke, I did not give two shits about. The dancing, I didn't care about. I forget which one it was, but one of the Yakuzas, you had like a card collecting scissors, paper, rock game. And it's like, I will collect the cards to the completion, but I'm not playing that fucking game.
It was MotZ from Kiwami 2.
Okay. And it's like, no. I will collect the cards because I enjoy the collection side of it, but fuck that game. It's just scissors, paper, rock. That's not fun.
Yep. But did you do the scissors or rock, paper, scissors from the Yakuza 0 where it was the Battle Babes arena?
I played it once or twice and then realized it was crap.
Yeah. The MotZ at least was a little bit more in-depth than the Battle Babes arena.
Yeah. But one thing I did really like about Yakuza 0 was the fact that money was also experience.
Yep.
That was a really clever idea. I was actually disappointed when I played the other ones and it didn't work that way. Because 0 was the first one I played, so I assumed they were all using the same system. No, no, not at all.
Yeah, you have the money as experience in that one, and then it goes to orbs.
Yeah.
In the others.
I mean, there's nothing wrong with that system. It's just that because the money one was my first experience with the series, I'd expected that to continue.
And it was just really nice because then you would every now and then have that situation where you're going, okay, so do I want to spend the money on this or should I level this up? So you had to game it out a little bit more and think through it.
Yeah, exactly.
Also, there were a bunch of ways to earn money, whereas the experience orbs, there's a set number of ways, and it's fairly low yield for a lot of them.
Yeah. But I mean, it made the thing, the real estate mini game, a lot more interesting.
Yep.
Because like even if there's nothing you want to buy, there's almost always something to level up, unless you manage to get all the way to max level. But there's almost always something to spend your money on, whether that's like a new weapon or new skills or whatever. There was like, because money was used for everything, always had a use for it.
The only exception is when you started getting into the abuse role of Mr. Shakedown.
Well, I think once you start deliberately abusing game mechanics, at that point you're at the point where you don't need, like, you're deliberately choosing to break the game at that point.
Yep.
And then, like, okay, it can't hold up to deliberate abuse, but it doesn't need to. Like,
True.
The casual player isn't going to be sitting there cunningly farming Mr. Shakedown for billions and billions and billions of yen.
Not just billions, max money cap. Twice.
Yeah, well, well, whatever the cap actually is, I don't know, but
I think it's $1 trillion.
right. But yeah, I forget exactly how it works, but I think if he robs you, he then has 1.5 times that much money on him. So if you deliberately get robbed and then beat him up, you get like a 50% boost to your cash, which you can then just repeat.
If you rank up everything that you can get for him, then it's one of them. He takes 50% extra, whatever you had.
Mm-hmm.
And then another one increases how much he starts with as well.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So you get both of those, and you just lose every other fight against him.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. The other thing is, once you learn his attacks, he's actually really easy to beat up. Like he's very, very telegraphed in all his moves.
Mm-hmm.
Well, isn't that the kind of the point of a lot of these bosses? Like they're supposed to be like Punch Out characters, kind of.
Oh yeah, I mean in Punch Out they have to be telegraphed, otherwise you'd never be able to dodge them.
Mm-hmm. And Mr. Shakedown is much the same because Mr. Shakedown in that game does the most damage out of anyone in that game.
He can wipe you out in a single hit if you're like when you just start the game and you're low level, he will kill you with one hit.
Yep. And even late game, if you time something wrong, one combo, you're dead.
Yeah. I mean, there were times when I was farming Mr. Shakedown that I lost the fight without, like, not on purpose.
Yep.
It's like I actually just legitimately lost the fight. And yeah, if you fuck up, he can make you pay for it. It's just that it's very telegraphed. So if you keep your wits about you, you will win like 95 times out of 100.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, those games are just so much fun. And they get the humor perfect.
Yes.
Good God, they get the humor perfectly in those games.
No, the comedy in those games is pretty spot on. There's like they'll build up the tension and then just deflate it with
Mm-hmm.
especially what's the girl's name? Hanako or something like that?
Hiroko.
Yeah.
No, Haruka.
Haruka, that's it. Yeah. This is the example you've given, but like big dramatic moment. Then she asks, "What's a bathhouse?"
Yeah, it's this big dramatic moment where like 3 important people have either just had the ever-living shit kicked out of them or been beaten to death. Just absolutely crushing revelations have happened. And the main characters are all kind of sitting around trying to figure out, okay, what the fuck can we do? We've just had the ever-living shit kicked out of us. Well, we could try doing X, Y, and Z, and one of them is, well, we need to get information from this person who's in a bathhouse. And she just, what's a bathhouse? Bathhouses or whorehouses?
Yes.
So
I think they call like soap houses or something like this.
Yeah, it's soap lands.
Yes.
And it's this little, like, I think she's 5 or 6 year old at the time.
Like that, yeah.
And she's asking this question to this grizzled police detective, this 20-somethings, hard as fucking nails Yakuza member, and the informant for fucking everything, just this master spy almost. And they're all just looking at each other like, I don't want to fucking tell the child that it's a whorehouse. You gonna tell her?
Well, I actually did something similar in real life when I was a little kid, because I was playing a game and one of the items was a magic fetish. And I said to what's a fetish? And she's like, why do you ask?
Let me make sure that I'm telling you the definition that is most accurate to what you're saying.
And then I explained that I was playing a game, and like, oh, okay. She's like, it's okay.
Oh, thank God, that's just a little statue. It isn't something that gets someone's rocks off. What?
But yeah, I thought that was hilarious in hindsight, because obviously at the time I had no idea what it was. But like as an adult, thinking back on that, it's like, oh, how tense would that have been for my mother? It's like, oh, why are you asking me this question? Because I would have been like 10, like far too young to be asking about anything sexual.
Well, it depends on whether you had a cootie phase or you didn't have a cootie phase.
I I remember being at school and everything. Girls have cooties. I was like, yeah, I don't care. I don't even know what that is. Shut up, go away.
Okay.
So yeah, like I would be sitting just anywhere, and then someone would be like snickering, going, "He's sitting with the girls," because it just so happened that there were like a couple of girls sitting next to me. Like, who cares? Like, yeah.
Yeah, I never had the cootie phase, and I didn't even have the apathy phase. I started out as, I like girls. Girls are pretty.
No, as a kid, I was fairly indifferent. I just like girls are just other kids. I mean, they're not special. They're just girls. And then when I became a teenager, it's like, oh no, girls are very special. I want girls. So yeah, a pretty sudden shift in mindset, somewhere around puberty, as tends to happen.
Yeah, for me, it wasn't a massive shift. It was just, oh, this is a new aspect to liking girls. Let me hide this behind a binder.
Yeah, and I was never a real life super seducer. No, that was not my personality at all. I was like, I liked them, but I wasn't the approach random women and ask them out type of person.
Probably because it's frowned upon if you ask out the women that are in your house already. They tend to be your family members. And
Like, even at school, I wouldn't have just gone up to a random girl at school and asked her out, because I was pretty terrified of rejection. It's something that I had to deal with. This is like, well, you kind of have to get over that.
You either get over that, or you realize that you're going to have a very large body pillow collection.
It's I think as I've aged, I've sort of, I wouldn't say lost interest, but sort of, I'm not that invested in finding another person. I sort of realized how comfortable I am being alone, and so now it's more the situation would be someone else would have to fit into my life, whereas when I was like a horny teenager, was like, how can I change to be your perfect man? Which is a terrible approach. Anyone who still thinks that's how you get, no, don't try and turn yourself into what you think they want. That terrible idea.
What do I need to do to make you want to touch?
Yes, yeah, that bad idea. Doesn't work.
It's much better going for becoming someone interesting that people will like, and I don't mean changing yourself to do so.
No.
I mean becoming interesting by developing hobbies, developing talents, succeeding in shit.
And Hoover Dam says she's still scared to ask her crushes out. I mean, it's different for girls. I mean, girls are traditionally the ones that get asked out. So if you're shy as a girl, that's often a selling point. A lot of guys like that. It's sort of like that's appealing to them. A shy man is never going to get laid. Oh, I shouldn't say never, but it's
Very
a lot more
rarely,
difficult.
unless they're gay.
Yeah.
And then they can get their doors bashed in
Yes.
fairly easily.
But it's going to be a lot more difficult for a shy straight man to get a girl
Oh, yeah.
than for a shy girl to get a man.
Yep.
And unless you go for cannibalistic wizards suggestion, which is effective, but you know our matriarchal society tends to frown upon drugging women.
Oh, I clicked away from that window for a second, so I was about to ask, did he recommend the large rock and nearby cave method?
A rag and a funny smelling liquid can help.
Okay. No, that... Well, no, that one doesn't cause that. A different funny smelling liquid causes you to go anosmic for a while.
Mhm.
Which, for those who don't know what anosmic means, it means that you go nose blind, I think is another way of phrasing it. You lack
can't
the
smell.
ability to smell.
You can't smell
Yeah.
things. I only know that because of Seinfeld, actually. Was it I think it was Seinfeld. They mentioned anosmia, and he's saying it's a bit mean putting like something that sounds like schnoz right there in the word.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think he went on to say rhinoplasty was just as bad because they know they've got a big nose. You don't need to go comparing them to a rhino.
But we can all admit that it is less cruel than the word lisp, right?
Or stutter.
Yeah. Because if you have a lisp, it really sucks having to say that you have one.
Yeah.
Have a lisp. Just make it a word that doesn't have an S in it, for fuck's sake.
I like the song Stutter Rap because he's like, I've got a stammer.
Mm-hmm.
And like he gives like he can't say stutter, so he just like stammer, which is not much better because it's still got that hard T sound in it. But yeah,
And apparently, as Game of Eileen just tossed, NVIDIA has a potential cyber attack that they've just had to deal with.
that's not good.
Yep. This is an article that she linked from Reuters. U.S. chipmaker NVIDIA said on Friday it was investigating a potential cyber attack following a news report that said the attack may have taken parts of its business offline for 2 days. The malicious network intrusion caused outages in NVIDIA's email systems and developer tools over the last 2 days. The Telegraph reported earlier on Friday, but said it is unclear if any data was stolen or deleted. We're investigating an incident. Our business and commercial activities will continue uninterrupted, NVIDIA said in a statement. But yeah, it got hit. Its developer tools and internal emails got taken down.
That's pretty bad.
Mm-hmm. Hopefully they figure out who did it.
Yes, ideally.
And I'm curious what the nation of origin will be for the person who did it.
Yeah, I don't know.
Would you guys
I-
bet on Russia or would you guys bet on China?
I'm gonna bet on Zambia.
Mm.
You got to
We
play
all
the
know those well-known Zambian hackers.
yeah. You got to bet on the outsider. Go for the long shot every now and then.
Well, they often go for the email scam. So
No,
I think
that's
that's
Nigerians. Don't
Yeah.
smear the
Oh,
Zambians with the low-level Nigerian
whoa,
prince scam.
my bad.
It's typically Nigerian scams, and there seems to be a lot of princes in Nigeria for some reason.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And can we all admit that they're all just trying to steal the scam of a Scotsman?
Is that originally a Scottish scam?
Oh, there was pretty much the most prolific scammer that has ever been was a Scotsman. If I remember correctly, his name was Gregor McGregor.
That is a very Scottish name.
Yeah. So
Wait, how did that go again? Scottish McGregor?
Gregor McGregor.
Gregor McGregor. Oh shit.
Yeah, was his name, if I remember correctly. Here, let me pull up the full story of Gregor McGregor.
I actually got,
Gregor McGregor.
I got a pretty funny scam email where it's like, we recently changed your password for this site that I didn't even know existed. But if you want to, confirm the password change, just click this link. And it's like, yeah, I didn't change my password for this site that I've never heard of. I'm not clicking that link.
Just
Gregor
click this link.
McGregor,
Just
or
go
as-
Gregor McGregor.
he styled himself while he was running his scam, the Prince of Poye, the Cazique, His Serene Highness Gregor L. General McGregor. And the entire thing was, he was a Scottish noble, low-level noble, effectively, who his father signed him up for the army originally. Then he got swapped over to, instead of serving in the army, he served in the East India Company. Earned some minor accolades. Then was it was the other way around. He was originally going to be in the Navy in the East India Company, then went to the Army instead of that. He got bumped around, got some very, very minor accolades, ended up being transferred to a unit that then later became world famous for what they did during the Napoleonic Wars, which happened. The things that got them famous happened just before he joined and then just after he left. None of them happened while he was part of them. But he routinely sold himself as being a hero of the Napoleonic Wars because he was part of this ridiculously famous unit. He was, but it wasn't famous when he was part of it. And bullshitted his way.
Details.
Yeah, getting more fame and money after he left the army. He then started to con various nations to hire him as an advisor. Each time just kind of taking money and scarpering off after doing fuck all. One of the times he financed the he got another nation to finance the invasion of, I want to say it was Florida. So he got a fair-sized invasion force up and running. He then went and landed in Florida. His men steamed off the ship, took a fort. He found out that there was a alcohol store in the fort. He proceeded to then hold up in the fort and drink through the alcohol store. As he did nothing else for this invasion until the enemy army was closing in to respond to this would-be invasion. At which point, he grabbed what little remained of the alcohol stores, scarpered back on the ship, and left his entire invasion force in the fort behind him. And he did this several times, earning large amounts of money and getting drunk off people's dime as they tried to get him to actually do an invasion. And he just refused again and again and again after conquering one area to then drink himself into stupor. He then ends up, after several of these incidents, getting chased away from one of the people he was trying to meet with, running into the middle of this very densely jungled area, he comes across a man that he later dubbed the Mosquito King, and gets pissed drunk with this man who he doesn't speak a word of their language. They don't speak a word of his language. But they both like drinking. He
Well,
then
that's good to have
claims,
something in common.
yes, he then claims that he got a deed from the Mosquito King for this large area of land where the ground is so fertile, all you have to do is drop a single seed and you'll have an entire garden bloom in that spot. That has water running through, and it is the sweetest, most drinkable water that you can possibly imagine in all of the rivers and streams within this area of land. It's naturally defended by a ridge of mountains that kind of cups this little oasis. And it is heaven on earth. So he goes back to England and he starts selling shares in this new area of land that he has. And he calls it Poye. And he talks about how amazing and magical it is and how he's been named King of Poye. And there's a grand palace that's being made in Poye. And all they need is they need more workers and artisans and just common folk to populate his kingdom. The capital's already there. It's already being built up. They just need more people. So move to Poye. You can buy your passage on the ship. You can get your mark for land. And you can go and you can live in this heaven on earth. So he bilks a ridiculous number of people. And I think it was 3 ships full of people he ends up bilking. The first one heads off much before the other 2 were supposed to. But they have plans because what they're supposed to do is they're supposed to make landfall at the harbor of Poye, and they're given the location that it should be, and they offload their settlers, and then they can come back for another shipload. So the first ship with 200 passengers heads off, and he's trying to fill 2 more ships with passengers, each of them having to pay him for their passage. As he's getting these 2 additional ships provisioned, the first ship ends up arriving. But they think that they arrived at the wrong area because there's no port, so they decide that they're going to go up and down the coast for a bit. See if they can find this port. So another month goes by as they're just trying to find this port. They can't find the port.
You let them drink the port? Is that what happened?
The settlers decide that, well, we know that this is the area that it's supposed to be on the map. Let's make landfall and go and find the capital of Poye. So they make landfall and they trudge off the ship, and the ship turns around, and by the time that the ship gets back, the next ship has already been sent, and it's almost there. First ship comes back and says, yeah, they dropped off the colonists. And the second ship arrives with another 200 passengers. Drops them off. Most of the people dropped off in those first 200 end up starving to death because this man had absolutely no conscience for having just people dropped off in the middle of a Nicaraguan jungle. But it all eventually comes to light, and he's able to plead that it was he had been defrauded, not they had been defrauded.
That's the sign of a master.
Mm-hmm. And he fucking got away with it.
Good.
Then he decides to run the same exact scan again in a slightly different area. This one falls apart a bit quicker. So he moves to a third area to run the same exact scam. At this point, the first area is gone. Wait a second. He wasn't taken advantage of. Long story short, this man continued to scam different places. When it finally came to light that he was scamming all these places and people were legitimately trying to kill him, he fled back to one of the South American countries that he had helped in their rebellion. This was one of the areas that he took a single fort, got pissed drunk, and then abandoned everyone. Apparently, the leader who had smeared him had been ousted shortly after. And they thought that it was just a smear attempt against him. So he was given a hero's welcome. Despite just taking a fort, getting pissed drunk, and then leaving people for dead. So he got away with all of it. That's Gregor McGregor. That is the just most ridiculous fucking con man in history. So, like I said,
like him already.
Nigerian princes are really just trying to rip off the Gregor McGregor.
Holy shit!
What
That's
happened?
From the Nigerian prince bit.
Yeah,
we got to that.
Yeah.
Holy shit!
That's why he told the whole story, is because he started by saying that the Nigerian princes were just ripping off this Gregor McGregor guy.
Yeah.
Well,
my mind is terrifying, Adam. You should know this by now.
Well, I was sitting there munching on leftover sushi from lunch, and I'm sitting there listening to this story, and I'm sitting there like, and then all of a sudden you go, yeah, what?
And then I tie it all back around, making it nice and pretty as a bow.
How did this work? I'm still baffled at this. This is amazing, sir.
The one thing that would make me like this guy even more is if you liked and shared and subscribed to the channel.
Don't forget to smash that like button.
Make sure you ring the bell so you get the notifications.
Yeah, and make sure you add us on what is it? Twitch and Twitter and TikTok.
Wait,
Facebook.
How would they add us on Twitch or what?
I don't know. Isn't that what you're supposed to do?
Sure.
We don't have a Twitch account for Minions.
You know, the Minions should have like a TikTok account, I think.
I disagree.
Which of us would be able to run it without committing suicide?
Get that Libs of TikTok chick. Get her to become a minion, and then problem solved. We now have a TikTok presence.
That at least has yet to kill herself from the stupidity of TikTok.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
That is a great Twitter account. So if any of you are on Twitter and not following Libs of TikTok, I strongly recommend giving her a follow, because she finds all sorts of fucked up, sort of loony SJW nonsense.
Though, if you do give her a follow, make sure that afterwards you get routine checks for cancer, because goddamn, that woman finds pure, unadulterated, malignant tumors on that goddamn hell site.
From where?
She suffers through it, so we get to suffer through it.
Mm-hmm. She finds it all on TikTok, hence the name Libs of TikTok.
Yes. It's one of my favorite Twitter accounts. It's just crazy.
It is fantastic, but the entire time you're just going, I want off this world. No, I don't want off this world. I want them off this world.
That's a better solution, yes.
I still say what we need to do is we need to designate a part of the world
California.
where we just isolate said part of the world. We quickly go in, we strip all the tech, all of the modern conveniences out, and we just send different groups of insane people there in waves. So we'll start, after stripping all the tech, we'll start by sending the people that say that there's other ways of knowing things and science is just white supremacy. We send them there. We've already stripped it of all the tech, so it's no longer a white supremacist landscape for them.
Yeah.
And we let them see if their other ways of knowing things actually work. Can they produce a civilization that survives? And the answer will be no. So once that group of people ends up dying out within the next couple weeks, we decide on another group of people. Let's say the people that say, well, real socialism has never been tried. Here you go. Here's your laboratory for real socialism.
Do it properly this time, yeah.
Send them all there. See if they are able to make a functioning socialist utopia.
But
When that
isn't
fails,
isn't that kind of the story behind Liberia? Is like the black people were like, we need a country that we can run on our own. It's like, have at it.
mm-hmm. Yeah, there have been a number of areas that this has kind of been done with, but the problem is that we've allowed the people outside of them without having to admit, yeah, this failed. Which is why I'm saying that we need to section off that area of land. And the only way that the person's allowed out is if they admit that this was a terrible idea and it failed miserably. Here's all the reasons why it failed miserably. Can I please be let out now?
I know the perfect place to do this. New Zealand. They're already fucking nuts down there anyway. So no one will miss it. It's fine.
Didn't they have the those Maori type people doing their chants and shit?
Doing the haka in the street, yeah.
Yeah. Dude, everybody's pissed off.
That was a badass protest to watch.
Yeah.
I always liked the haka because in Australia versus New Zealand sporting events, the New Zealand team will always do the haka before the match. And as a kid, I didn't care about the football game. I just wanted to see the haka. And it was like, yeah, my stepdad can watch the football now. I've seen what I wanted to see.
Yeah, the haka's a cool thing to see. And it definitely kind of gets your blood up when you see it. I can't imagine what it would be like to actually do it.
Yeah.
If seeing it alone is enough to make you go, like, yeah, let's fucking crack some heads now.
Yeah. Like, they look like, I mean, they mean business. They're fucking doing that shit.
Yeah, it's very impressive to watch. And, yeah. It's the highlight of any sporting event that New Zealand takes part in. I don't give two shits about sport, but I don't mind watching the haka.
And I have to imagine that the only thing that saves it from having to be blurred out is that the number of people that get raging erections from adrenaline is relatively small in the population.
Is that real?
Yeah, there are people that get adrenaline boners. Have you never heard of adrenaline boners?
No.
Barry, you've heard of them, right?
I'm aware of them. I've never experienced one, but I have heard of.
Well, like I said, the vast majority of people don't.
Oh, hold on. I haven't heard of them, but I understand the idea of having an erection in a time of, a heightened. It's not.
Adrenaline gets the blood pumping.
Yeah.
Yep.
But it's not like I'm something that sat there and opened up a pamphlet and there's.
My understanding is it's not actually a sexual boner. It's just,
Sexual bonus.
the blood is pumping. You're full of adrenaline, and
Sexual
certain body parts
bonus.
inflate somewhat. Probably not the right word, but they expand.
For most people, that's actually something that's kind of selected against when it comes to adrenaline rush, because it kind of shuts off that entire mechanism.
Well, hold on. So, do you think people get boners when they go on a roller coaster?
Oh yeah, there are people that get adrenaline-fueled boners. That's what I'm saying.
Shit.
There's a certain percent of the population. They're fairly small, but there are people
Splash
that
Mountain makes all the more sense.
they get hit by an adrenaline dump. They just end up with a raging erection.
I was just thinking, it makes sense that it was selected against in terms of evolution, because you're presenting quite a vulnerable area to whatever danger has filled you with adrenaline.
Exactly.
So it makes sense that it's a better survival mechanism to shut that system off rather than to activate it.
Yeah, so most people, they don't get adrenaline-fueled boners, but some people do.
Yeah.
And it is completely uncontrolled. It's just
Yeah.
adrenaline dump, and suddenly, way.
And up she rises.
All of a sudden, it's Al Pacino. Whoa!
Only hopefully a bit taller. But yeah. Like I said, I can only imagine that they're saved from having to blur the haka, or having to be very creative in how they shoot the haka.
Yeah.
Because it is so rare for people to get adrenaline boners.
Man.
And Cryptic's been quiet for a while. Has Cryptic fallen asleep, or is he still around? Cryptic? Did you fall asleep? I think you fell asleep.
You right there, Cryptic?
But yeah. Other than...
I can't.
Oh, there we go.
Oh,
No, I can't hear you.
you can't hear us?
So, did you fall asleep?
Say it again. Whoa, I can't hear him.
Oh, I
It
think
sounded
he's
like he
having
was being
to...
out.
No, I think he's having... He might actually not be able to hear us, and is listening to the stream to hear us after the delay.
Oh shit, that's not good.
So he's
If-
back in time.
I am correct on that, Cryptic. Once you've heard me say that, say, you are correct, sir.
Blink twice.
That way I'll know that you're responding to that.
You are correct, sir.
Okay.
Ah.
In that case, do you want to try to reload and I'll click you back in, or is there another thing that you can do to see if you can sort it out?
Evil Canadians. There's
It's
evil
now the
Canadians.
call and response section of the show.
Ha.
Well, while you guys are sorting that out, I'm going to go check out of stuff.
Oh, you know what?
Oh,
That was
okay,
one
he
thing that
clicked in and then immediately clicked out again. Let's see if he clicks back in.
it's not good.
We have an Asian down. Repeat, an Asian down.
Nope.
Can you hear us now? I'm going to take that as a no. He can't hear us right now.
So be.
Do you have your headphones set to the right setting?
I hope so.
Okay, now we can hear you. And you can hear us, it seems.
Yes.
Fantastic. That's all sorted out. So, you've been quiet for a while because you couldn't hear us and you were listening to us on a delay. Do you have anything that you want to say? Anything that you want to talk about?
No, everything I want to talk about makes me angry. So the whole Ukraine thing and all, ineffectiveness of everything else. But anyway,
There have been some amazingly badass lines from that, though.
yes, they have been, and they're showing us that those people are fucking hardy as shit. So.
Mm-hmm. Probably my two favorite lines that I've heard coming out of it thus far are the "put a flower seed in your pocket, that way when you die on my soil, you'll at least make it pretty." Holy fuck. That's a goddamn great line. Also, the "surrender, fuck you."
It's that bass grandma.
But yeah, it's infuriating, and it's shit that we had a hand in fucking up that entire situation
Right.
because we had weak leadership that drew lines in the sand that the Russians knew we wouldn't follow through on, so they challenged those lines in the sand, and we didn't follow through on them.
Well, just like Obama when he hit his red line in Syria, and yeah, that shit didn't turn out very well, did it? So, we do have dementia patient number one as I so I was when y'all want to hear something funny. It's like on Tuesday and Wednesday, I had a couple of long days with my boss, and we would end up talking on the ride there and back, right? The whole Ukraine thing came up, and my boss typically he's a liberal. The whole time I'm like wailing on dementia patient one, and he did not fucking disagree with me. So he now know I hate Democrats as weak and stupid.
And the part that pisses me off the most about all this shit is Cryptic. You might remember this. Do you remember back in 2019, 2020, when the news was always talking about how Putin was trying to find a successor? Because Putin was planning on stepping down?
Yep.
Do you remember when those stories stopped?
Yeah, when fucking Biden basically was known to basically win. He was about to win. So.
Yep. The moment that it came out that Biden had won, suddenly all the mention of Putin stepping down or trying to find a successor disappeared that same fucking day. And people that are confused as to why Biden's win stopped that from happening. Cryptic, do you know why Putin was thinking of stepping down?
Because they thought, he couldn't fucking beat Trump, basically.
Not just that. His entire country got economically buggered over a barrel.
Yes, because of the sanctions, the actual true sanction on his country. Yes, I remember.
The sanctions, and probably the more damaging thing, Russia, for those who don't know, a large portion of Russia's economy is petrochem.
Yes.
They have a hell of a lot of petrochem. One of the few nations that has more petrochem than Russia is the U.S.
Mhm.
When Trump was in office, under the policies that Trump put in place, we were producing an absolutely obscene, a gloriously obscene amount of petrochem. To the point where the U.S. was energy independent.
Yes, we were.
For the first time in, I think, any of our memories.
Yes.
It was also putting out so much petrochem that it reached a point where people were paying more for the barrel than the oil within the barrel.
Well, the price of oil was negative, wasn't it, at one point?
Yep, it reached a point at one point where you were paying for the material to make the barrel rather than the oil. In fact, the oil meant that you were getting the barrel for cheaper.
We have in the United States, people don't realize, we have the top. We are in top 10 in terms of oil reserves in the whole world.
Yeah, we're one of two nations on Earth that could realistically go completely isolationist and not suffer from it.
Yep. We have more oil than fucking most of the world combined.
Mm-hmm.
We don't destroy the environment for it, sure, whatever, but we have enough to be self-sufficient. And that's just the oil reserve. We're not counting the oil shells on top of that.
And Spud Gun, in what you just said, the 2019 43% of U.S. exports from Russia. Do you mean U.S. imports were from Russia, not exports? Because if it's U.S. exports to Russia, then that wouldn't strengthen Russia. And the 43% imports from Russia still wouldn't be a problem when we're fucking them over a barrel by every other measure. Because, yeah, you can still trade with someone while you're actively destroying their economy. You're destroying their economy a bit slower by trading with them, but you're getting shit that you want by doing it. So it pays off. If you mean that 43% of U.S. exports, or 43% of Russia's imports were U.S. exports, which would be the other way that what you said could be read, then yeah, that's still the U.S. benefits. It's kind of like how I laughed when Trudeau was trying to do we're going to fight American tariffs with Canadian tariffs and American tariffs because we have ridiculous mineral stores within the U.S. Trump was trying to encourage the use of U.S. mineral stores. He sanctioned a lot of the shit that is just general bulk goods that the U.S. can also do. So he sanctioned certain metals, for instance. Or not sanctioned, but tariffed certain metals from Canada and tariffed, I think, a bit of Canadian oil, not that much compared to what he did to Russia. But there were slight tariffs put on Canada because Canada wasn't paying what it should in NAFTA or NATO.
No. And another part of the reason why Canada's been cheating us is also they've been fucking subsidizing a lot of their agriculture, despite of that also, to subsidize for the tariffs that we put on the other shit.
Mm-hmm. And what Canada did, which I still find fucking hilarious because it shows how goddamn gormless Trudeau is. So U.S. put tariffs on bulk, nondescript goods. Canada's response was, oh yeah? Well, we're going to put tariffs on bourbons, Levi jeans, And I'm trying to remember, I think it was Tennessee whiskey. Those were what they put tariffs on. Can anyone name what the major problem with putting tariffs on those products is? If not, I'll... Oh, go ahead, Cryptic.
They hurt the freaking South. Well,
That's not the problem with it.
okay.
It's the same problem that you have if you put a tariff on champagne.
Oh, okay. I got you. The source of the product.
It is a effectively designer product.
Yep.
And being a designer product, it is a product that people will happily pay what it costs to get that product. Because when someone wants Levi jeans, it isn't just that they want jeans, it's that they want Levi's. When someone wants bourbon whiskey, they aren't going to go, well, I'll just buy a Canadian whiskey instead. No, they want bourbon whiskey. When someone wants Tennessee whiskey, they're going to buy a Tennessee whiskey. You only tariff shit that isn't designer goods. Because if you tariff designer goods, it doesn't do a goddamn thing. The people that want to buy the goods will still buy the goods. Whereas if you tariff steel, someone that wants to make something out of steel will just buy the cheapest price for the grade of steel that they need. So you want to buy something that you need, what is it? 1080 steel, if I remember correctly, is one of the standard steels. You would go and you'd buy a 1080 steel. And if this 1080 steel is X number of dollars, whereas that that 1080 steel is X plus $1, you're going to buy the first 1080 steel rather than the second 1080 steel. Because all you care about is that you're using steel of that quality. So it just made me laugh when I heard Trudeau, oh yeah, we're going to put tariffs on American goods too, and then he just names off a shit ton of brand goods. It would have been one thing if he went, well, we're going to tariff corn. Because yeah, if you're buying corn, you aren't going to go, well, is this corn American? You'll go, is this corn? It is? Okay, I'm buying your corn. It's cheaper than that corn. And Spud Gun responded that the U.S. took and refined crude oil from Russia. And yeah, the U.S. still bought some crude. What the hell just fell on my desk? I don't know. I'll find out later. The U.S. still bought and refined crude, and then it sold off a shit ton of that crude. The amount of oil that the U.S. was producing was enough to run the U.S. The thing is that we were still selling oil. So in order to sell the oil, we either sold the oil that we produced here and then bought in additional oil, buying it for cheaper than we sold our oil, or we bought in crude oil and then refined crude oil and sold that while using our native oil.
Yeah, we did the same thing for Venezuela, actually.
Yep.
We don't realize that the biggest thing, people realize, even though Venezuela has probably the largest oil reserve in the world, right?
Its refineries suck.
It doesn't have great refineries. It's trash. It's garbage. That's the reason why Russia is so keen on keeping that country basically a dictatorship, because they control that shit much better. So the Venezuela should be the richest country in the world. Literally, they should be in terms of oil, right? But they're not. It's just because they don't have the infrastructure. When they do, when they were built, like ExxonMobil actually had a refinery down there. It was taken over when Hugo Chavez became president, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it became a shit show because that place was run like a fucking typical communist society, and it wasn't maintained. Is basically became a state-run entity and failed. So that tells you something, right? One of the richest country, well, one was supposed to be one of the richest country in the world. Supposed to be. Oh, Venezuela should be what we are now in terms of power in the continent. But then,
Well, Venezuela wouldn't be on the same scale as us. Venezuela would very easily be the most powerful South American country.
right? But I'm saying like was the equivalency of like what we are now in North America, what they should be down there
In
right?
South. Okay,
Yeah,
that makes
yeah.
sense.
In South America, yeah. However, they're not because of the way they run their economy and what they've done, and and I understand what you're saying. Like Venezuela would never be like us because they also have tribal issues that was never resolved. Like the indigenous population, the history of that is also very interesting. So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
But yeah, it's just infuriating that we have a very easy way of going through and dealing with Russia. We could cripple Russia in a matter of months if we wanted to.
Yep.
The Democrats aren't willing to do that because it would go entirely against a lot of what they want.
Yeah, they want the same government as Russia.
Yep, and well, they want the same government as Russia had, which is also part of the reason why I think that the Democrats have been in a very weird position of they aren't willing to do anything to actually harm Russia because the actions that would legitimately harm Russia are actions that would harm their positions and other things. Because you want to cripple Russia again, cycle up U.S. production of oil. Cycle it up to the point that we had it under the Trump administration and then continue from there. You'll tank the Russian economy. But they don't want to do that because it goes against other policies that they have.
Yep.
But the reason why they talk so tough on Russia while doing fuck all about it is, I think, because Russia is effectively the apostate. Russia's a nation that, under the USSR, Russia was communist. Russia was the big dog communist of the world. And then what happened? The USSR fell, and Russia decided that they weren't going to be communist anymore. They had what at least the far left idealizes and praises constantly, and they turned their back on it. That's what I think a lot of the people on the far left hate Russia. But a lot of them are now having problems because while they hate Russia, they hate the US as much or more. So you have a bit of a schism happening in the far left where some of the far left are going after Russia because it's horrible authoritarianism. And that's mainly because Russia used to be communist, now it isn't. And then you have another portion of the far left that's saying that Russia's the hope for the free world because it's something that can damage the US.
Well, it's also how Russia fell, right? During the fall of the Soviet Union, like after that, they were in a world hurt for a long time. Like the
Mhm.
economy collapsed for a while, and a lot of people resent that. And like you said, it's a model they wanted to follow, but it failed spectacularly.
And it's not so much that their economy collapsed once they changed, it's that the degree to which their economy was actively collapsing became apparent when the party fell. Because the USSR had a collapsing economy for long before it became apparent that its economy was collapsing. Just once the party fell, once the party was no longer in power, it became far more obvious to the world as a whole what the hell was actually happening in Soviet Russia. I mean, shit, for the longest period of time, Russia claimed that there were no serial killers in the USSR. You guys know that that was one of their claims, right?
I didn't, but I mean, I can believe that that's something they would claim.
Yeah, during the 80s when the US had a large string of very high-profile serial killers in the 80s, that's when you had the BTKs, the Bundys, the John Wayne Gacy's, all that shit. The main serial killers that people think of when they think serial killers, a lot of them were operating in the 80s. And Russia was claiming that they didn't have any serial killers. They were claiming that that's just something of the decadent West. And then the Soviet Union fell, and we start hearing about the chessboard killer Chikatilo and all the others, that many of them were operating and known to the government to be operating as serial killers for an extended period of time, but the information was suppressed because the USSR does not have any serial killers. And it might have been per capita that they might have even had more. I haven't looked up that particular stat, Spud Gun. But yeah, they had a fair rate of serial killers. And China has tried to say the same thing, that China doesn't have any serial killers.
Maybe they're doing the SJW definition where we don't have serial killers. Sure, we have people who kill a series of victims, but they lack the institutional power to be a serial killer. The same way that black people can't be racist.
That would somewhat work, except the main one that I can think of when it comes to China was effectively the exact opposite. The serial killer turned out to be Han Chinese, which I've explained to you guys the different ethnicities within China before, right?
Probably, but I don't know them offhand.
China has something like 48 to 56 different distinct ethnic groups within China.
Which Sanguine will now list.
If I remember correctly, 95% of the Chinese population, though, are Han Chinese.
It's
That is correct.
Yeah.
Maybe it's the other way around then. They lack the institutional power to be victims. Sure, they can be people who were murdered, but only these particular type of Chinese can actually be victims.
Oh, that was effectively what one of the serial killers in China was, because he went around a northern province of China in effectively coal mining territory, if I remember the area right. And he was just slaughtering non-Han Chinese women, doing horrendous things to them and murdering them. The police denied that there was any serial killer. The government officials denied and still deny that there is any serial killer. The people knew that there was a serial killer because how many times do you walk into the same exact crime scene with different people and it not be a serial killer?
That's
But
fair.
yeah, it was obvious that it was a serial killer. Same MO, same staging of the crime scene. Everything was identical. And they were trying to claim that it wasn't a serial killer because it would have made the government look bad.
I see the Trix rabbit made it to China.
Yep. And that's the same reason why Chernobyl became what Chernobyl is, because it would have made the party look bad. When, no, it made the party look a fuck ton worse when you have an irradiated plot of land that we're now studying and going, oh shit, did you know that this species evolved to deal with greater radiation levels than it should?
1986, that's when the disaster in Chernobyl happened. Just looking it up.
Yep.
That's I was 5. Yeah, April 1986, I was still 5. That's a long time ago.
Yeah. And the thing is that people are still trying to make false equivalents when it comes to Chernobyl. Because what are the other major nuclear disasters that you hear almost always uttered in the same breath as Chernobyl?
3 Mile Island?
3 Mile Island, that's one of them. What's another one?
Those are the only two I usually hear.
One of the ones that gets brought up currently is Fukushima.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So, do you know how much radiation was released by 3 Mile Island?
To general public?
Yep.
None.
Virtually none, yeah. It was the belch of radioactive material from the reactor during the 3 Mile Island incident was equivalent to flying over the Atlantic Ocean 3 times.
So people were tired and crabby and had sore legs, but were otherwise fine.
Yeah, it was absolutely fucking nothing. It is flying over the Atlantic 3 times, and I think that is something like having 2 or 3 X-rays. That's the level of radiation that we're talking when we're talking 3 Mile Island. It was a just fart, as Furry Kitten said, of radioactive particles that did fucking nothing to anyone because it was so little radiation. And Fukushima, holy shit, Fukushima, people talk about it like it was some great failing of nuclear power. Fukushima should be heralded as one of the most amazing feats of engineering known to man. Fukushima, a nuclear power plant, got hit by a fucking earthquake, and then after the earthquake, got slammed by a goddamn tsunami. And did it have the majority of its reactors go down? No. Did it have the majority of its reactors go critical? No. Did it have some of its reactors go critical? No. Did it have some of its reactors go down? It had one. Yeah, it had one reactor that its casing was broken. It got hit by an earthquake and then a tsunami. And it had one reactor that's casing broke.
That's it. Scrap nuclear power forever.
It just... How the fuck are people saying that this is some goddamn terrifying thing? That is amazing. holy shit, we designed a reactor so fucking well that it got hit by an earthquake and a tsunami and its casing broke. One of its casings broke? What the fuck? That is engineering on the scale of the fucking Hoover Dam as far as I'm concerned.
It's sanguine. There's still money to be made from fossil fuels. We can't transition to nuclear yet.
And that's the thing that pisses me off the most about it. That there's the people that should be most for transitioning to nuclear energy. The people that are so against fossil fuel companies, that are so against using petrochemicals. The green energy movement should be just absolutely ragingly erect at the idea of nuclear power plants.
You would think.
Because nuclear power plants, if we wanted to, we could transition to nuclear power plants in the next couple of years and almost completely get rid of fossil fuel consumption and mass energy generation. It's something that, it's beautiful. And the new reactors, a lot of these problems, the Chernobyl reactor, I think, is a Gen 1 reactor. The 3 Mile Island was, I think, a 1.5 reactor. We're currently dealing with 2s and 3s. We're working on 4s.
Well, I know from Pokemon, Gen 6 is like the best one. So
that is sadly not the case with nuclear reactors.
Mm-hmm.
We're currently working on 4s and 4+, I think, are the 2 that we're trying to develop. And they're fucking amazing. One of the types of a Gen 4, or maybe it's a Gen 3.5 reactor, is the Molten Salt reactor. I know I've talked about this on stream before. Do any of you remember, should I skip over it, or should I geek out about Molten Salt reactors for a moment?
I don't mind. You can talk about nuclear reactors.
So, Molten Salt reactors are fucking amazing, and they're ridiculously cool. So the way that we cool Gen 1 through Gen 3 reactors is a water cooling system, effectively. So that has some really strong advantages when it comes to water. Water has a really high specific heat and is really able to just suck up heat fairly quick. So it moves it along, cools down the reactor brilliantly. It has some massive flaws, because what happens if one of your pipes in your house cracks?
Tends to flood.
Just starts pissing the water all over the place, right?
Yeah.
If you don't patch it, it just continues pissing the water. There's no point where it just stops until you run out of water.
Mm-hmm.
And everything past that crack ends up going bone dry in fairly short order.
Yeah.
So a molten salt reactor, rather than using water to cool the reactor, uses molten salt, which sounds weird because you're going, molten salt, that sounds really fucking hot. How is that cooling a reactor? It's really fucking hot, but it is still cool enough that it is cooler than the components that it's trying to suck heat away from.
Fair enough.
So it still works. Do you know what happens when a pipe with molten salt inside of it cracks? So like we said with water, it just starts pissing the water out. With molten salt, what happens is that some of the salt leaks into the crack of the pipe, like it's about to try to escape. But molten salt needs to stay really goddamn hot in order to stay molten, in order to stay liquid. As it leaks through the pipe, it cools down. It solidifies.
Fixes the leak.
It patches the fucking leak by itself. Now, granted, you want to go back in and do a more permanent patch, but it means that if a pipe suddenly cracks, the salt will plug that crack until you're able to get people there to fix it without ever interrupting the supply of molten salt to the reactor. Meaning
That's
that
pretty
even
cool.
if your pipe cracks, it's still cooling the fucking reactor. With Chernobyl, one of the reasons why it went so catastrophically bad was one of the coolant lines cracked and it just started pissing water out. So the section of the reactor that needed cooling from that water line wasn't getting cooling because the water that was supposed to go to it was just being pissed on the floor of, I don't know, sub-basement 3. But you wouldn't have that with molten salt. So that solves that problem. Then there's other reactors that are even more ridiculous in how cool they fucking do this shit. Because there's the pebble bed reactors. And pebble bed reactors have the nuclear material in these spheres of effectively really insanely engineered ceramic. And that ceramic sphere around the radioactive material acts as enough shielding that it prevents a hell of a lot of leak. Also, these spheres, what happens is you feed them into the instrument, your pebble bed reactor starts, then over time, the nuclear material degrades. So what you'd have to do in a traditional reactor is you'd have to swap out all the material and you'd have to then deal with processing out the old, highly radioactive material that is still somewhat dangerous. And you'd have to throw that in long-term storage.
Can't they just put pictures of Fonzie up everywhere? Because, I mean, that guy was pretty cool.
Sadly, that doesn't quite work. The radioactive particles don't respect the fist bump on the
Jukebox.
So it doesn't quite work out that way, sadly. But the
Damn.
pebble bed reactor, you have these little pebbles. So as they get depleted, you have them get dumped out of the other end of the reactor, and you just add more pebbles in, and it continues running. And those pebbles that have been dumped out the other end of the reactor, guess what you can do with those? That's really fucking cool. You can send those in to get revitalized, and then you get them back and you're able to put them in your reactor again and fucking run your reactor off of a second run of the material.
Sounds good.
Really goddamn good. It means that we have far less waste with those. Also, a hell of a lot of these different types of reactors, the best part about them is Gen 1 reactors, Gen 2 reactors, or Gen 1, Gen 1.5, Gen 2, I think there's 2.2, 2.5, and then 3 reactors, and I think we have...
What about Gen T
3.5?
Maxi reactors?
There's no Gen T Maxi reactors. Again, it's a bad idea sticking her in a radioactive chamber.
Probably.
But all of those reactors, the core of the reactor is what's called a breeder reactor. Breeder reactors were the very first sort of nuclear reactors that we made. We made
It just
them
means
for
not gay and fertile, so we can have kids.
somewhat in a very weird way that is not entirely wrong. What breeder reactors do is that they produce more radioactive material that then can be turned into weapons grade material. In fact, the breeder reactor pumps out weapons grade material. So in old school breeder reactors, first type of reactors that we made, because they were made during the Manhattan Project and we were trying to get high grade weapons grade radioactive material in order to make nukes, would pump out this weapons grade material, and then we could take that and make nukes out of it. So you don't want all of your civilian reactors to just be producing a shit ton of weapons grade material. So someone went, okay, now that we aren't just trying to make weapons out of this shit,
But isn't it your Second Amendment right to have weapons-grade plutonium in your backyard?
Technically, it should be, but that's beside the point. The thing about how they did this was they went, okay, so we have this breeder reactor. It works brilliantly. It produces some energy, but it also produces this highly, highly radioactive weapons-grade material. Let's put a second burn chamber on this son of a bitch and make it so that that second chamber just reacts the weapons-grade shit. So we get an absolutely fantastic amount of energy out of it. And at the end of it, it isn't weapons-grade material anymore. So now we still have to come up with storage and disposal methods. But it's not something that someone could harvest that and decide that they're going to make a bomb. Sounds really cool, right?
Yeah.
Awesome. We can now generate a massive amount of energy, and we aren't ending up with weapons-grade material at the end. Remember how I said that they added on a second burn chamber to do this?
Mm-hmm.
What happens if you subtract the second burn chamber? You're now producing weapons-grade material again, right?
Yeah.
So what happens if you have a nation, I don't know, let's say just something completely off the top of my head, Iran, that's saying that they want to have nuclear reactors for energy generation, but people are kind of worried that they might want to make nuclear weapons. And they're asking for the reactors that are functionally breeder reactors tacked onto a second burn chamber. What happens if we give them those reactors and they decide, okay, we're going to disconnect that second burn chamber. Now they have weapons-grade material and they can make the nukes that they want to make. Do you know what happened?
Make them do a pinky swear.
Yeah, sadly, the pinky swear is not as binding on major government bodies as it is on
In the playgrounds.
Playgrounds. Yeah, it is really a damn shame. It would be amazing if the pinky swear was able to hold sway over international bodies, but sadly, it does not. But do you know the really cool thing about Gen 4 reactors?
You can't disable the second one?
Gen 4 reactors aren't based off breeder reactors.
Ah, even better.
Do they produce the weapons-grade material? They just produce energy, and then at the end, they plop out lowly radioactive material rather than highly radioactive material. Which makes it goddamn cool. Because then if you have a nation that says, well, we want nuclear reactors, you're able to go, okay, we have this amazing Gen 4 reactor. It's the height of radioactive material processing and reactors. It's absolutely goddamn amazing. We can send you over the people that can show you how to set these up and make sure that they're operational, make sure that you have all the proper security measures deployed. And they go, well, we don't want the Gen 4, but the Gen 4 create the most energy. They are the safest. They're the best. By every measure, they're the best, with the exception of if you want to make nuclear weapons. Now, suddenly, if the person's insisting, no, we don't want a Gen 4 reactor. We want a Gen 2 reactor. You're able to go, you aren't looking for energy. You're looking for radioactive material.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas if they do actually just want the energy generation, and you say, yeah, we'll come in and we'll establish Gen 4 reactors, make sure that your people are trained up, they should respond with, fuck yeah, that sounds amazing.
Yeah.
Because we get this massive amount of energy and it's safer than all the other. Fuck yes, give us that shit. Suddenly you know that they just want the energy. And you don't have to worry about them disabling the generator and making a nuke, because there's no disabling the generator to make a nuke.
Mm-hmm.
They're goddamn amazing. But the people that should be pushing for this the most, the green energy people, they don't give a shit about actually getting off fossil fuels. What they care about is using power generation methods that they want, which really are the least effective power generation methods that will end up doing the most harm to the people that are having to rely on them. Because the thing is that solar energy, don't get me wrong, solar energy is pretty fucking awesome. But you can only generate solar energy when the sun's out.
Or the daughter. We've got to be inclusive.
Sadly, Luna isn't quite as bright, so it doesn't really generate that much energy.
That's actually irrelevant. Inclusion is far more important than efficacy.
But yeah, the way that they want to do it is they want solar power and wind power. Solar panel works brilliantly. If you're in a bright, sunny area that gets a lot of direct energy from the sun, fantastic. You're in the desert, yeah, solar power, fucking amazing. You still don't generate any power during the night, but during the day, you just generate a ridiculous amount of it. Wind power works really well if you have a fuck ton of wind.
Like near Taco Bell.
Wrong type of wind, but I like that you're coming up with ideas. But if it's a day where there isn't any wind, they don't really work that well. So you have
Well,
this.
you just get the school kids to go blow really hard into the generator, into the windmills. Let's go.
Sadly, again, they aren't quite that sensitive. So that won't work. Again, real good that you're thinking of ideas, but just doesn't quite work for this application. But the thing is that we're in this glut or famine, where we either have just absolutely ridiculous amounts of energy that we're generating, because when the sun is shining, we're generating a fuck ton of energy from solar farms. Or it's the middle of the night and we're generating zero energy from the solar farms.
From what I've heard, storage is the main issue with those. Like you can generate a ton of energy. It's just you can't store it for when you actually need to use that surplus.
Exactly. So you generate way more energy than you can use when it's working well. But there's too many situations where it just isn't doing anything, and we don't have large enough and efficient enough storage capacity to manage running off of the surplus when we're in the famine situation. It's kind of like, yeah, you could, let's say we're in a small village, and it's a small village that gets completely isolated. So we have an option of either we could routinely get just enough fish from our river to feed everyone, just enough every day. Or we could get a fuck ton of fish every third day.
And then be eating rotten fish.
Which situation's better for the survival of the village?
Well, the first one. The second one, the fish is going to go off.
Exactly. And that's effectively what solar and wind is. Solar and wind is the second option. It's choosing the fuck ton of fish every so often.
I mean, the additional non-analogous problem would be depleting the fish population. I mean, you're not going to deplete the sun, but like if you took a massive portion of fish every third day, then that would have a bigger impact on like the population of fish and their ability to breed and renew themselves. Then
Yes, that is the weakness of the analogy. But it gets across the idea of there's only so much storage you can do.
Yeah.
And that's the big problem with solar and wind. Now, if we went to nuclear and we continued developing better storage techniques, yeah, absolutely. Fuck yeah, that sounds amazing. Let's do that shit. But the Greens aren't trying to do that. The people that claim that they're worried about global warming and claim that they're worried about the pollution, they don't give a shit about that. They just want us to transition to the energy methods now, even though they don't work now. And yeah,
Yes.
the Chinese do make a fuck ton off of solar at the moment. Also, the Chinese do this hilarious thing every so often where when they start getting called out for the fact that they aren't doing shit for their own energy grid, they'll make a big show of making like the world's largest solar farm.
Mhm.
But there's
But,
always some. Oh, go ahead.
Now, Assassin was saying earlier that the greenies don't actually care about like the energy side of it. They're just trying to destroy Western civilization,
Yep, which is what
which
I'm
is
pointing
why
at.
they're pushing for wind and solar, which they know is not going to work because they're trying to bring the civilization down.
Yep, the people that are in the know in those movements, I absolutely agree. Once you reach a certain point where you have the information, then the only option left is that it is malice rather than ignorance.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a lot of people that fall below that level where they are just fucking ignorant.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's a concerted effort to make sure that people stay that way. They don't want the masses finding out and then being like, well, why the fuck aren't we using nuclear then?
Yeah. And like I said, the Chicoms, when it comes to the solar and wind, they do hilarious things like they'll make the biggest solar farm in the world. Do you know what the main problem is every time that they do this?
No,
Because they always do it in specific areas. So the last time that they did it in the shadow of a mountain.
that's probably not ideal.
Yeah. So they had the world's largest solar farm, and they brought in news crews and reporters and journalists from all over the world to see this massive solar farm, and the journalists all oohed and awed. And they haven't really generated a single kilowatt hour from the solar farm because they made it directly in the shadow of a mountain. So it doesn't really get sunlight.
Seems like a
Much
bit of
of
an
ever.
oopsie.
Yeah. And they'll make the biggest wind farm that has ever been made, and they'll plant it smack dab in an area that is renowned for not really getting wind. So they have these massive showpieces that they keep on doing that mean absolutely fuck all because they just build them in the worst places. And I'm not sure if I can chalk it up entirely to the communists are just trolling people with that.
Mhm.
I think a large part of it is the communists just being very communist about this, and they don't get how this shit works.
I mean, communists are almost by definition retarded.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, and they're building of dams, which all of their dams are ridiculously slapshod. Like, I've brought up the Hoover Dam so many times because I fucking love it, and it is one of the most glorious bits of engineering in the world currently. Do you guys know the idea of the 100-year flood?
No.
So, with structures, you build them to deal with a bunch of different issues. So, you want them to be able to handle the annual flood that you get every year, right?
Yeah.
If it's a dam or something like that. So, you'll build for the annual flood. If you want it to last for at least a few decades, then you'll build for the decade flood, because every decade or so, there's going to be a flood that's larger than all the other floods
Mhm.
in that decade. Then there's the 100-year flood or the century flood. And the century flood is bigger than any other flood within that century. And again, it's at any given 100-year span of time, there's going to be a flood that is much larger than every other flood in that period of time.
Yeah.
So, do you think the Hoover Dam was made for the annual, the decade, the century, or something else?
I was going to say, is this like a trick question, or is it actually like 1,000 years or a 10,000 year flood?
Yes, it was made for, at the very least, the millennial flood.
Okay.
It was made for a 1,000-year flood, to the point where, and a couple people from chat already jumped in with my favorite bit of information about the Hoover Dam. So the Hoover Dam is made out of concrete, and concrete requires a specific amount of time per volume of concrete for it to cure. So the larger the volume of concrete, the longer the time it takes for it to cure. The Hoover Dam will go through over let's see, it was when I first heard this. Yeah, it's still over 1,000 years from today before the concrete of the Hoover Dam has completely cured. It will go through a millennial flood before it has finished setting.
That's pretty funny.
It is the most insanely over-engineered thing on the fucking planet right now. It is absolutely glorious. Because they just poured so much goddamn concrete. And they planned it so ridiculously. You can do bombing runs on the Hoover Dam and it still be functional. Whereas the Three Gorge Dam in China, made much later than the Hoover Dam, is currently collapsing. It is already breaking. Our dam hasn't even finished becoming as strong as it will be. It's goddamn amazing. And that's shit that there are certain projects in human history, or in American history, rather, because I'm narrowing it down. There's certain projects in human history, of course, that fit this as well. But there's certain projects in American history that if you're American and you hear about, and you don't just suddenly get a raging freedom boner and have this, fuck yeah, I don't know what the fuck is wrong with you. One of those is the Hoover Dam. You should be damn well able to cut glass with how hard you are if you actually look into all the shit about the Hoover Dam. It is amazing. Another one of those is, of course, the space program. The space program was absolutely goddamn amazing. The Panama Canal, another brilliant example, and I'm still pissed at the sons of bitches that went, okay, we designed this canal. We carved this canal. We made this canal what it is. We set it up, and now we're going to give it back to Panama. Fuck you, it's ours. You didn't make that shit. We made that shit. Blood, sweat, and tears went into that fucking canal. Why the fuck are we paying to go through the Panama Canal? There wouldn't be a Panama Canal without the U.S. Why is the U.S. paying to use it?
That's a good point, actually. You'd think you'd get free travel on the canal that you built.
Yeah, at the very least, if they were going to give it back, it should have been, okay, any U.S. ship that comes through this canal goes through for free.
Yeah, I mean, that's the least they can do.
That should have been the bare minimum, but no. They just gave back the Panama fucking canal to Panama, and now we have to pay to send our ships through it. Fuck you, it's our canal. It wouldn't be there without America. And without America being as ridiculously stubborn as it was, because we weren't the first ones to come up with the idea. We were just the ones that actually fucking did it. Which is, again, a fuck yeah! So, the Panama Canal, the Hoover Dam, the space program, and one of the ones that's a bit strange that most people don't think about our national highway system.
Well, I know the moon landing was fake. So were the other ones faked as well? Is that how this works?
No, not at all. So there's one rule that I still think is hilarious when it comes to our highways. Do you know one of the most important rules when it comes to highways?
You must be atom levels or higher to drive on them.
Every highway, I can't remember the unit of space that it needs, but it's every X number of miles of highway needs to be perfectly straight
That's
for
unfair.
a specific period of time or a specific period of distance. And the reason is that in the event that we have to defend America, every stretch of highway functions as a runway.
Pretty clever.
Yep. So there's a requirement that every section of highway that it has a specific distance that is able to function as bomber runways. It's amazing. It is fucking awesome. And yeah, our highways are larger than most highways throughout the world because of that requirement. It has to be able to land. And this was a regulation put in at the time of the Flying Fortress. So it has to be able to land a Flying Fortress. Which just, again, it's a fuck yes. That's amazing.
Very Kitten says it was a myth and propaganda, the strategic plane landing thing. So
If you have the info to back that up, please do send it to me because I have not heard or seen evidence that it was a myth. And I have seen things that say that it's not.
well, I'm going to take the Australian approach. Never let the truth get in the way of a good yarn. So I don't care if it's true or not. It's a good story.
It's one of those fantastic things. And that is one thing that there are certain things from certain cultures that I definitely want to adopt into American culture. One of the things that I think needs to be stolen is the Australian just knack for when any Australian hears another Australian bullshitting, they immediately jump in. I love that about Australian culture.
It's like the drop bears and the rest of it.
Yeah, the drop bears. Does not matter what lie it is about Australia. I have never heard an Australian interrupt another Australian lying about Australia and go, no, you see, that isn't true. The closest that I've heard that is an Australian interrupting another Australian to say, well, that isn't entirely true. It's much worse than what he just said. He's saying that they'll occasionally drop down from the tree. No, you have to have a specially designed umbrella when you're going through, and they'll always just dial it up, and it's amazing. Another one of the traditions that I think we need to adopt as a nation is we need to adopt the pub culture of the UK, especially Ireland and Scotland. We need that pub culture brought to America. We also need to steal karaoke culture from Asia. And another one that we need to steal, this one from Japan, we need to steal the little nisakayas that they have, the little Japanese bars. And I saw you on mute, Cryptic. Don't think that you got away with that. You were very
Yeah, no, because I lived in Japan for a while. Trust me. Holy shit, do they love those things.
Mm-hmm. And you have to admit, it would be awesome if we stole Japanese karaoke culture and Japanese tiny bar culture.
We have it here already. It's just got to know where to look for it.
Oh, man, if someone could point me to where I could find a proper little Nisakaya with a bar mama and a karaoke place near me, I would fucking love it.
Oh, well, I'm at this. There's only about 3 places, right? But they do serve you alcohol, and it's a karaoke joint. So, you know, it just,
I just hope that in Japan everyone flies around on clouds like in the show Monkey.
that is true.
That would be awesome.
It's only a matter of time.
That was a great show. As a kid, I absolutely loved it, and my mum absolutely hated it, which made it even better
Nice.
because it would annoy mum every time I wanted to watch it.
Mm-hmm. Also, of course, we need to steal weird Japanese game shows.
There's a lot of those.
Yeah,
I want the human Tetris game.
Yeah, the human Tetris game. And there's one. Okay, so when I went to Japan, one of the weirdest and best shows that I watched while I was in Japan, I can only describe as a show where the Japanese decided to take the piss out of Japanese people eating by grading their use of chopsticks. Because apparently, people are becoming less and less proficient in their use of chopsticks and their knowledge of proper etiquette within Japan. So, the Japanese developed a game show, which is they make this amazing feast, and they just grab random people from the street and they say, "Would you like to eat like a 7-course meal? We won't charge you for it. You get to do it for free. All you have to do is sit in front of a camera as you do it." And people go, "Yes," because why the fuck wouldn't you? You're offered this amazing meal for free, and all you have to do is eat in front of a camera? Fuck yes, sign me up. And I watched an episode of this, and it was just like a bunch of different people. So, like, high school student age, college age students, a just fucking workman fresh off a build site, some salarymen, little old ladies, all kinds of people were being brought in to eat this absolutely amazing looking meal. And it just, as they were eating the meal, the panel were ripping the shit out of anything that they did wrong. It was hilarious. I didn't understand a word of it, but I could understand the tone that they were using effectively. That's really the only way I can describe it.
There's always, like, when I think of Japanese game shows, there's always one. I don't know what it was called, but they had to drink water while a boxing glove on a spring punched them in the bladder, and whoever the last one to piss themselves won.
Nice. But yeah,
like,
this
only Japan.
This game show was literally just them eating, and then the judges, their panel, would decide who won the competition. And it was based off of just the best chopstick usage and the most accurate way of going through the meal. So, for instance, when they first were let into the room where the meal was, they had this little area where they could wash their hands real quick to get rid of the dirt and dust of the day before the meal. Some people opted in, some people opted out. The people that opted in automatically got points tacked on because that was the correct thing to do. And the person who won with a perfect score in the episode that I saw was the construction worker. And he was just like dead tired when they first asked him if he would eat and just sit in front of the camera. And he was just like, "Sure, okay, yeah, food sounds good." And then he did everything perfectly. And it was just fantastic seeing at the end, because none of them were told that there was a prize or anything like that.
Okay.
But at the end, this guy has just had this amazing meal, and he's just looking like a pig in shit, happy as can be after having eaten this fantastic meal after a long day. And then he's given an award, and a prize, and he's just like, what the fuck? Cool, okay, I got... Awesome, yeah, if you want me to come by and eat any other time, just let me know. Fuck, sure. But it is amazing. And yeah, there's the most extreme elimination challenge, which was so fucking good. Did you ever get that in Australia, Terry, or was that an America only thing?
Doesn't sound familiar. I mean, I can understand from the name roughly what it entailed, but I don't think I ever saw anything like that down here.
So, are you familiar with the name Takashi's Castle?
Yes.
Okay, Takashi's Castle was a Japanese show that MXC ripped off effectively, but it didn't just rip off. What it did was it took all the footage from MXC and then it redubbed everything.
Oh, okay.
So they just stuck in weird plots and jokes and quips throughout the entire thing through the dubbing, which they didn't try to match to mouth movements or anything like that. It was just obvious bad, like Hong Kong action movie dubbing.
I think all dubbing should be terrible. It adds to the experience.
Yeah, and it was just every name was changed. So you remember the field reporter that was part of Takashi's Castle that would occasionally interview the contestants?
I don't remember much about the show. I remember the name because it was on TV. I think it was on the Comedy Channel, I want to say.
Mm-hmm.
I maybe watched 1 or 2 episodes, but I never actually watched it seriously or anything. So
there
I
was
have
this
very fuzzy memory.
There was this ridiculously dressed field reporter from the show. Effectively, think like Age of Exploration English officer. So pith helm, brown. I'm trekking through Africa uniform for the English military. That was what the guy was dressed like. And MXC gave him the name Guy Ledouche. All the names were just ridiculous. So one of the main people, I don't think it was Takeshi, I think it was the other guy, was Kenny Blanket Chip. Just all of the people given ridiculous names, all of them, just everything's dialed up to the nth degree with the dub. It's hilarious. MXC, I recommend you take a look at it. I think it's something that you would probably find funny.
Yeah, I'll have to have a look for it.
And that is a perfect example of Japanese game show that was stolen by America and done justice. Also, Iron Chef.
I went to the Wikipedia page for lists of challenge in Takeshi's Castle.
Yep.
One of the first ones listed is ball cupping. It's like,
yep,
there had to be a better name than that.
Takeshi's Castle was amazing, as was, like I said, the spoof dub version of MXC. Most Extreme Elimination Challenge. But it's shit like that we should just steal. Shamelessly steal it.
Die or pie sounds interesting. To begin, the contestant has to roll a giant die. The number they roll tells them which hole in a giant cake they must get into. Hole 1 is closest to the pie chucker, while hole 6 is furthest away. Once in a hole, the contestant has to lower the lid so that only their head is sticking out. Now the pie chucker throws a custard pie at them. If they get hit, covered in cream, they're out. But if the pie misses, they win.
Nice. Like I said, weird Japanese game shows, they need to be stolen by America. We need to take on weird Japanese game shows. There's another one that I remember from watching Japanese TV while I was there, which is the Tongue Twister game. I'm not sure what the actual name is. I just know it as the Tongue Twister game, where they slap you in the balls if you get it wrong.
Mhm.
And it is just a bunch of guys wearing the traditional Japanese, effectively sumo diaper. And they're standing there with their legs spread with this just hand on a pivot point placed below them. And they are given a tongue twister. They have to say the tongue twister correctly. If at any point they stumble, the arm flips up and slaps them in the balls. And then goes back down. It's just one of those, what the fuck, Japan?
I assume it was Japanese, but I think you were telling me once there was a game show where they had to sing karaoke while getting sucked off.
Yes.
And that was like, wow.
That is one that, if it was ported to the US, there would be a lot of people signing up for.
I guess.
If you get the tongue twister wrong, you get slapped in the balls. Markedly less people sign up for it.
I would imagine so.
Though what would be hilarious is if they're the same sign-up form, so it's just luck of the draw.
Oh, God.
Sometimes your ball slaps, sometimes you suck off karaoke. And then, like I said, the Kitchen Stadium from Iron Chef Japanese. Good God, I love that show. That is one of the best cooking shows ever. And part of what made it one of the best cooking shows ever. You watched Iron Chef, right, Terry?
No.
Adam, Cryptic, did either of you watch Iron Chef? They're both muted, so I have to give them a moment to unmute and respond if they are so
No,
inclined.
anything to do with cooking, I'm probably not going to be too interested in.
So, there we go. Adam, did you ever watch Iron Chef?
I've watched a couple of episodes, but it wasn't something that I was really, it wasn't something that I would frequent, so to speak.
Fair enough. The best part of Iron Chef, to my mind, was always the starting story for Iron Chef, because every episode there would be this scene where it was the chairman for Kitchen Stadium would talk about why he chose the ingredient, and his stories would never make any fucking sense. So one of the ones that I remember is, when I was young, I would often go up to the shrine on top of the mountain with my grandfather. And I remember this particular mountain was very tall, and even though I was young, I would get tired as I walked up the mountain, and my grandfather would get tired, so we would sit and talk for a while, and then we would get back up and continue up. And we would see these beautiful mushrooms and beautiful trees and flowers as we went up the path. And of course, once we got to the top, we would do the normal shrine washing and then give our offering at the shrine. And that's why tonight's secret ingredient is sea bass. What? You were talking... What? What the fuck does sea bass have to do with a mountain? Every single episode would start with something like that. It would make no goddamn sense what the story was about. But there would be a story that would have nothing to do with the fucking secret ingredient. So the entire time, you're going like, okay, he's talking about a mountain, so it has to be something from the sea, right? And then it would be, no, it's like wheat. Or, okay, he's talking about going on a fishing trip with one of his uncles. I don't know. Is it going to be mushrooms? You'd just be trying to figure out what is the least connected thing to his story to see if you could guess the ingredient correctly. And the ingredients would, some of them would be really normal ingredients, like button mushrooms was a secret ingredient one of the episodes. Some of them would just be really goddamn weird. Like there's one that I swear is just mutant pig. It was Tokyo X. That was the secret ingredient. Tokyo X. And it was this very large, odd-looking pig. So to this day, I think it was mutant pig. Was
it a long mutant pig?
Because it was just this very strange looking pig where it was kind of hairy, but not as hairy as like Mengalitsa. But it also had very strange markings on it. And it was enormous compared to what you standard think of as a pig size. It was like Hogzilla, only woolly and kind of weird coloration. So it looked like a mutant pig. And I swear to this day, it was mutant pig was the secret ingredient. But that was the best part about that show. And to answer your question of how do Japanese game show talks start, I was talking about random things that I think the US should adopt after talking about different things that should be automatic patriotic hard-ons. So I started talking about how we need to get like Japanese izakaya and karaoke culture, and we need to steal pub culture, and then we started talking about Japanese game shows because fuck yeah, Japanese game shows. But I have been blabbing for quite some time. Do any of you have anything that you really wanted to talk about that my rambling has prevented us from talking about? Or anything that you just want to toss out there?
I discovered a website called Board Game Arena where you can play board games for free. Technically, one player in every game has to have a paid account. But as long as you're playing like a popular game, that's usually not going to be a problem.
Nice. So it's like Jackbox for board games?
Yeah, it's actually really good because it's actually got rule support. So like there's a lot of programs out there like Tabletop Simulator and Tabletopia, which they give you the components, but you have to know what to do with them. This will like enforce the rules for you. So if you're playing, let's go with Monopoly. If you roll a 7, you can't secretly move 9 spaces and hope no one notices. It'll move 7 spaces for you.
See, but the being a sneaky bastard is half the fun of board games.
Well, I suspect you will not enjoy having the rules enforced then.
All I'm saying is that is there any point to being the bank in Monopoly if you aren't embezzling?
Well, I don't think it's supposed to be a desirable role. It's just someone needs to do it.
True.
Well, hold on. Is that really a scenario that happens where somebody is playing Monopoly and they try and sneak an extra move or two?
No, people will do sneaky shit if they can, yeah.
But my point is that in Tabletop Simulator or Tabletopia, you could do that. Like there is nothing in the game system stopping you from just doing whatever. Like if you're playing a card game, they won't stop you from drawing your entire deck on turn 1 just because fuck it, why not? Whereas Board Game Arena, enforces the rules. They have the program set up so that whatever game you're playing, it has the rules programmed into it, and it can do things like tell you how much shy of being able to afford a certain thing you are. And it's like, and if you try and buy it without enough things, it'll just say, no, you don't have enough money. Whereas the other two would be like, do what you want.
Fuck it, you go negative. Have fun.
Well, you don't even go negative. It would be up to you to lower your money after you made the purchase. And if you forgot... So Tabletop Simulator and Tabletopia are good for what they do. But I definitely prefer Board Game Arena because, I don't trust random strangers on the internet to play fair. And this makes sure that they do. And
what I said and what Furry Kitten just said reinforces that belief, I think, in Terry.
Yes.
What's the point of playing the bank if you aren't embezzling? And Furry Kittens, if you aren't embezzling as the banker in Monopoly, you haven't learned the game. But one thing
I prefer the rules.
One thing that I really wish systems like that would do is, have you ever heard of fairy chess?
No.
Adam, have you ever heard of fairy chess?
Fairy chess? I've heard of fairy bread.
So, fairy chess is a form of chess that uses now archaic and somewhat arcane pieces. So, chess was a game long before its rule set was completely standardized. And there's a lot of pieces that were used and were common in different areas that aren't in a standard chess game. So, for example, there's... Let me quickly double check. I think it's the Nightmare. It's either the Nightmare or the Unicorn. Fairy chess pieces. So, fairy chess had a bunch of different pieces that had different movement styles. Some of them were just powered up versions of the standard pieces. Some of them were entirely unique. So, for example, a just bulked up version of one of the standard pieces was, one of the names for it is the Rider. And it is a knight that a knight moves 2 spaces up, 1 space over, right? A rider could move any number of 2 spaces up, 1 space over in a row.
Oh, okay.
Rather than just once.
Well, you could stall out the game then. You could just have him just moving in circles and go, turn's not over, turn's not over. You can concede any time you like, turn's not over, turn's not over.
The thing is that with a rider, or it might be a knight rider's another name for it, it was a piece that could do the, let's say you do 2 steps forward, 1 step to the right. The next move, if you decide to continue moving, with that piece, would be 2 steps forward, 1 step to the right.
Oh, okay. So the same direction has to be maintained. Okay.
You'd be able to do the same movement for more than 1 iteration of that movement. And there's other pieces that would do similar things. So, for instance, there were the bishop and the rook. There were other versions of that, where one of the other versions was a version that could only move 1 square rather than any number of squares in the direction that they decided to move.
Okay.
Another one was that it could move 1 square in any direction or in the corresponding direction. So for a rook, in any straight from it, so straight left, straight right, straight up, straight down, you could move any number, or you could move 1 space diagonally.
I don't know if you've played it, but a guy released Chess 2.
Okay.
And basically, he added teams
Mhm.
to the game. So, like, there's the standard chess pieces, which is like the first team. That if you all you want is to play chess, you can do that. But he's also got like there's one team that has two kings, and so if either of them gets checkmated, then you lose. But it's got some other advantage to compensate for it. I forget. Oh, that's right. Because one of the rules he added is if you can get your king over the halfway mark of the board, you win. That's like an alternate win condition.
Mhm.
And so the two kings double the risk of checkmate, but either king can cross the halfway mark. So
Mhm.
then there's one where pieces gain the movement of anything they're adjacent to. So if you have a rook and a bishop adjacent to each other, either one of them could move like a queen. Then obviously the other one would no longer be adjacent and stuck with its normal movement. But you could like plan out elaborate things with that. There was one that was called the Animals, and it is really really weird. Like knights can take pieces, but they have to immediately return to the square they started from if they do. So like you can move it normally, or if you want to take a piece, you then have to move it back to where it started from. And rooks can take friendly pieces if they want to, and it's just like all this really weird shit. Is if you're interested in fairy chess, maybe chess 2 is something
that
you'd
might
want to check out.
that might be something that I have to check out. Yeah, like I said, there's a whole bunch of different, very strange fairy chess pieces. Like there's the Amazon, which is effectively a powered up queen.
How can you power up the queen?
You add in a knight move as well as the rook
Oof.
and bishop.
Okay.
So effectively in a 5x5 area centered around the queen, or around the Amazon can attack every space.
Pretty insane.
Yeah, and then it can do every space going in any of the main directions. So up any number, diagonal, up left any number, left any number, down left any number, down any number, down right any number, up right or right any number, up right any number. And that's the Amazon. And there's a whole bunch of different pieces because, like I said, it's just all the archaic rules for chess where chess wasn't organized. So there's pieces that combine move sets, like the Amazon was a combining of move sets. There's pieces that change move sets, like the Knight Rider versus the Knight that I explained. Then there's pieces that add to the move set by just adding like one space in any direction type deal. Then there's another version of the pawn that is able to move 2 squares in any direction, but it just hops over one of those spaces. So it can't take a piece directly in front of it, but it can take a piece 2 in front of it.
Okay. I just sent you the Steam link to Steam 2, to Chess 2.
Oh, greatly appreciated.
I think you could play this with a regular chessboard, but you'd have to find the official rules so you know like how the different pieces move with the different teams, because they all use like bishops and rooks and knights. It's just they move differently based on what team you're playing as.
Yeah,
I'll see if I can find the rules for you. But
Furkin, yes, I have played Sacrifice chess as well as. Have you ever played rotating chess?
no.
Rotating chess is a chess game that my one of my chess coaches might have developed. This was in high school. I was varsity chess for a year. And the way that you play rotating chess is you set up the board like normal. One of you picks white, one of you picks black. You play out one move a piece, and then you rotate the board 90 degrees. Whoever was white is still white. Whoever was black is still black. You take another move a piece, and then you rotate the board 90 degrees. Whoever was black is now white. Whoever was white is now black. So every 2 moves, you switch sides as you play rotating chess.
That sounds frustrating.
Oh, it's amazing because effectively you have to set up the weirdest goddamn checkmates in rotating chess. Because you need to set up a checkmate that is unlikely to be seen by your opponent and unlikely to be interrupted by your opponent.
Yeah. I think that one's way over my head. I don't think I'd be playing that.
Oh, it is one of my favorite forms of chess. It is. Once you get really good at that, you either become really good at standard chess or you become... Or rather, you stay decently good, but you can never really progress past decent because your mind is always going, well, I need to set up the weirdest fucking positioning imaginable. It's fantastic.
Does it have it on here? I wonder. I'm trying to find the rules to chess too, but I don't seem to be finding them easily. But I'm sure if you go to I'm sure if you look hard enough you'll find it. It's just it's not showing up in like initial sort of searching.
Fair enough. And oh shit, I just realized that we're going on 3 hours now. Shall we go round the horn for parting words?
Sure.
So Adam just unmuted, so that'll take as him volunteering for his first crack at parting words.
All right. Well,
Unless you had something that you wanted to talk about other than parting words.
nothing comes to mind.
Okay. So yeah, first crack at parting words then.
Well, shit. I can't believe we've been running for 3 hours.
Yeah, seems like it flew by.
Yeah. Damn.
And I'm sorry if my incessant nattering caused any of you not to be able to talk about anything, but I just got into several roles without thinking about it.
Hey, no worries, man. You know, when you hit that nerve, you hit that nerve, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, as always, I appreciate you letting me join you
Always fun.
on Fridays. You all have been lovely, and for both panel and audience, I love you all, and God bless.
Sounds good. And then I'll go to Terry and Cryptic. You will be next. So if you're still awake and able to say anything, be primed and ready.
Cute. I'll say everyone check out Board Game Arena because it is great.
Fair enough. Anything in addition, or is that the sum total?
That's it. That's all I've got.
Fantastic. So, Cryptic, you are thrown into the hot seat rather quickly.
I'm alive, but it was fun. Yeah.
The alternative.
Oh, it's fun. You know, it's like it's too goddamn late right now. My mind went, "You stupid. You need to go to bed, motherfucker." But anyway,
Thanks for coming, and thanks for letting me get be on. So,
Always welcome, man. So I'll leave off with my standard of if you're passionate about something, make sure that you devour it. Don't let it devour you. And with that, have a good night, all. The zoo is
Bye,
closed.
guys.
This is when you say goodbye, Adam and Cryptic.
Oh,
oh,
Cryptic.
yeah, you all can wear lady panties.
What? That's not
Apparently, you can
goodbye.
wear some lady panties. Are you going to say goodbye, Adam?
He said lady panties.
Yeah, he said
goodbye.
lady panties. You didn't say goodbye, nor did you say wear lady panties.
Oh, I didn't know it was either or. Good night.
Have a good night, all. Bye.